The first thing that you will notice when you come to Vietnam is how narrow a lot of the homes are. I think way back in the day, you were taxed on how big the front of your house was. So everybody built these narrow houses, which were super long and super high, but the front of the house is small, right? The other thing is that typically the bottom floor is going to double for whatever it is, plus a garage. You'll also find that really almost in all places, except for your nicer hotels, almost everything is this marble tiled floor. And then I think the other big thing that will shock people is a lot of the bathrooms, because they're not that big. Basically, the shower and the toilet are in the same spot.
Hey there, it's Carly with the Expat Focus podcast. Today, we're exploring some of the need to knows if you're planning a move to Vietnam. My guest is Creighton Wong, an American who owns a digital marketing agency, and in more normal times, he would be based not just in Vietnam, but in other parts of the world as well, as a digital nomad. Creighton's going to share his opinion and, at times, pretty amusing experiences with visas, Vietnam's healthcare system, working in the country as a foreigner, finding places to live, and learning the language. So, Creighton, how did you come to be living in Vietnam?
Gosh, it was completely accidental and serendipitous at the same time. I knew that I had a passion and a love for being a world traveler and experiencing different cultures, experiencing different foods, and I wanted to dip my toe in the water to work remotely. And so I got accepted into this program called Hacker Paradise. You can look it up online. And what they do is they set up workplaces and living spaces for people who would like to travel and work abroad. And so that was a wonderful turn of events. And the first place that they were going was Chiang Mai, Thailand, which is exactly where I wanted to go, because that was kind of the it spot for
Yeah,
digital
for
nomads.
vloggers and for
Well,
digital
uh,
nomads.
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I did end up living in Chiang Mai for about 3 months. The thing I loved about Chiang Mai, and the reason it was such a hot spot for expats, is there's so many expats there that you're never really alone. You're always going to bump into somebody who's got an interesting travel story. And my joke was, I never ate dinner alone. Even if I would go out to eat by myself, I'd always bump into somebody. But anyway, getting back to your original question, Hacker Paradise changed their itinerary. And so they were going to go to Da Nang, Vietnam first, Bali, Indonesia second, and Chiang Mai, Thailand third. And so I was faced with a question of, do I just dive in or do I wait for Chiang Mai? And I really made the decision saying to myself, look, if you make an excuse not to go to Da Nang, Vietnam, there's always going to be a reason. There's always going to be a reason not to go. Things come up. There's always a birthday party here, an anniversary there, a thing to go to. And so I just made the decision.
So you mentioned that Chiang Mai was, on your bucket list. Was Vietnam up there as a destination before you ended up in Vietnam?
I wanted to explore through Southeast Asia, and Vietnam was definitely a destination that I wanted to check out. I did. I guess I didn't realize how much I would end up, first of all, spending time here, and also enjoying it. Like I said, it was a serendipitous surprise.
So how long have you been in Vietnam now?
I think I was 4 years ago when I first came to, a little over 4 years ago, when I came to Da Nang, and then I've been sort of off and on because I've had to go back to the States for business, and so yeah, I've been just jumping over the pond, except for this time because I am not getting on an airplane anytime soon.
I was going to say, how much has the COVID-19 crisis for you as a digital nomad really changed your plans?
So from a working standpoint, it hasn't changed my day a whole heck of a lot. because I'm used to working at home and working in coffee shops and co-working spaces. It hasn't really impacted me from a daily routine standpoint. From a world traveler, digital nomad standpoint, Vietnam's borders are still closed. I can't fault the methodology on it, but certainly I have the itch. I definitely have the itch to get going and get exploring again. But right now, it's if we're going to explore, it's going to be within the borders. Not we're not going to stray outside of the borders at all.
Would you say that COVID has really illustrated, I suppose, some of the starkest differences between the United States and where you are in Vietnam, or are there other really big differences between the two countries for you?
I mean, it's almost night and day. When we talk about the government responding, because I think they also realized very honestly that they do not have the healthcare infrastructure in Vietnam to be able to deal with a massive outbreak, and that a lot of people would have died. And so when we talk about Vietnam being shut down, it was shut down right after the Tet holiday. Tet holiday is Vietnamese New Year's. It coincides with the Chinese New Year's, and it was early this year. It was in January, and so I had these great ideas of getting back in the pool and swimming, and I had made about 6 trips to to the pool. I was getting into my rhythm, and then boom, the pool's just shut down for 3 months because they shut down the schools, they shut down the public places like that, and soon thereafter, non-essential businesses were shut down too. But the people were by and large compliant with it because they understood that this is just a sacrifice for the greater good. The other thing too is, for example, we had one of our renters here travel to Dubai and back, and there was some intense tracking involved in that. So they tested her and asked her questions when she was at the border, but then there was a follow-up, and they sent health officials over to our place to interview her and run a temperature and just check on her. So they were very, very diligent and very, very on top.
Well, I want to get back to the healthcare aspect of Vietnam because
Uh-huh.
in this episode today, we're talking about elements of for other expats that might be looking at a move to Vietnam. Obviously, not right now, but
Hmm.
possibly in the future. And I wanted to jump into some practicalities. And I guess to start with, talking about visas, I'm guessing you're an American passport holder. So, what visa did you come to Vietnam on, and what are you there on today to be able to live and work in the country?
I came here on a tourist visa. A tourist visa is very easy to get, except for now. Under normal circumstances, it's very easy. They have a thing that's also called visa on arrival. You basically do all the paperwork, and you get a letter, from the government, and then you get off the airplane and you show this visa on arrival, and everything is stamped and taken care of at the, at the airport, and you can get everywhere from a 1 month no in and out visa to I think the max is a 1 year visa, but I have to do border runs every 90 days. So rewind a couple months ago, and so I'm married now, and my tourist visa that I got right before getting married was expiring, and I went down to the immigration to say, hey, look, I want to turn this into a marriage visa. At the time, I would do border runs to Cambodia or jump on an airplane and go up to like Bangkok for a weekend, but those avenues were closed. The lady's sitting there looking at me, and she's like, well, you already have a visa. And I was like, I know, I want a marriage visa. And she's like, well, you have to leave the country and come back. I said, I'm not leaving the country.
How
You
is this
know?
possible?
I mean, the moment I step out of Vietnam, I'm like, you guys aren't going to let me back in. And even if you do let me back in, you're going to put me into a 2-week quarantine. By the way, that's another thing for anybody that was entering at the time. And like, I'm not getting back in. and by the way, you guys have that 3 months to sort of figure this out for all the people that have been hanging out in your country. But I don't want to be on an airplane. You don't want me on an airplane. Can we work this out? And the answer was no. So, fortunately over the years, I've made some friends, and, one guy that's his job. He works with the visas. And what we were able to do, this is because I'm married to a Vietnamese woman, what I was able to do is get a temporary residency card out here. And that was the only way that I could do it without physically leaving
Leaving the country.
Because at that point, my two options were, well, thank God that was an option because I could do it and everything was above board and legal. The other thing was just do I just let the visa expire and just hide here until, right? It's kind of like, do it this way and then just beg for forgiveness later. Because I'm not getting on an airplane and nobody's going to let me in except for the United States. And that's, the last thing I want to do is spend 18 hours on an airplane.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely not in this current climate. I'm
Yeah.
curious, you mentioned about knowing people and how that worked in your favor. We interviewed Steve McGuinness on this podcast about working as an expat in Asia, and he said they have a very different attitude towards, for example, bribes and doing favors in Asia, whereas in the West we see that as an incredibly unethical and illegal behavior. In Asia, it kind of flies, and that's how you get things done in some circumstances. Have you had experience of that dealing with administration in Vietnam?
Absolutely. Like, I'll give you two stories on that. One is I did a border run over to Cambodia, and quite frankly, it was probably a racket. I could have just done the whole thing, myself and gone through it. Whatever, it would have probably taken about an hour or hour and a half to get, to do the loop and everything. But the hustle is, a guy comes up and is like, oh, I can push through faster, blah, 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 and it's $5 here, $10 there. And next thing you know, it's like, I'm out $50, which was fine because I was able to do that border run in the entire process in like 15 minutes. It's like, yeah, if you want it done, it's like, yeah, you got to put a little money here, a
fast
little money
tracking
there.
through the airport. Yeah.
You know what? It pretty much, it was pretty much like that. And then, yeah, there's just other places where it's like, yeah, you want this piece of paperwork signed and you want that piece of paperwork retroactive. There's just a dollar amount that's attached to it. Oh, I'll tell you this story. So my first time through Vietnam, I thought incorrectly that I had gotten a 60-day visa. So I knew I was going to be there at least about 35 days, which is obviously more than a 30-day visa. So I thought I had a 60-day visa. I was incorrect on that. And so I didn't find out until I'm trying to leave Vietnam. And they're like, do you know your visa? You've overstayed your visa. And I'm like, no, I've got a 60-day visa. And they're like, no, you don't. You've got a 30-day. And okay, so I'm stuck. And so these guys take my passport. I don't even know where they're going. And I'm like, he's got my passport. Can I have it back? Like I'm trying to figure out. I'm calling my travel agent, trying to be like, what do I do? At this point. And then I just kind of figured it out. And I was like, you know what? These guys are going to make me sweat it out a little bit. Fortunately, the airline rep that processed me came and kind of helped speed things along because I was also running late for my flight. And then I knew what the deal was too. I said, look, there's nothing going on here because if you really want to penalize me, you want me to leave the country. So just tell me what the fine is, and just tell me what the fine is. And quite frankly, the fine probably never made it up to the government. It was probably split
pocketed by somebody. Yeah.
All the cops at the airport, and they probably had a nice evening buying a lot of beers. So, but I knew what the deal was. I was like, all right, I'm going to have to pay you money. So just tell me how much money, and of course I'm trying to hide the big bills, where they don't see it and think that I have a lot of money on me. Yeah. I've just got a few bucks on me. I'm just a poor traveler.
So you've got a residency visa now. I'm guessing that means no more visa runs.
Yeah, it ends up being Much cheaper in the long run. So it's a 3-year temporary residency, and I do not have to do any visa runs.
And are there any restrictions being on a residency visa in Vietnam, or do you essentially have all the same rights as a citizen?
I haven't tested it, so don't take my word for this, but I don't believe that I have full, I guess we'll call them citizenship rights. I do think that there's still an issue if I were to leave the country and trying to get back in. And I do think that there are certain issues with government programs, for example, certain insurance programs that I'm not available for.
Can you get healthcare or the local, I suppose, public healthcare in Vietnam on your visa?
I'll be honest with you, I haven't really tried. The reason I haven't is coming from the US, everything, just walking in off the street, everything is so much less expensive over here that you start to understand why people do medical tourism. So I'll give you a couple stories here. When I was in Chiang Mai, I found this very, very highly recommended and reputable clinic, and I went over there. I hadn't had a checkup in God knows how long, and they're like, "Well, which tests do you want me to run?" And I was like, "Well, how much for all of them?" And I think it came out to something like $70 USD to run every single test under the book that they could run on a blood and a urine sample. And I was like, run them all, and everything was fine. Recently I just got a checkup here in Vietnam. It was about the same amount. There was once upon a time, my wife had she was having problems with her upper spine. Like it was really tired and it was really sore. And finally I was like, hey, look, we got to go get this thing checked out. Well, we end up actually at a really nice hospital. I'm thinking she's getting x-rays. She ended up getting an MRI. So now I'm freaking out because in the United States, an MRI can cost,
right? Yeah.
Anywhere, depending on where you go, anywhere from $2,000 to $10,000, and then probably multiply that up if you come off the street, because that's the negotiated rate. Well, to go to the clinic and meet the doctor, then they got us a cab and came over to the bigger hospital with us. She got an MRI, got in the cab with us, went back to the little clinic, and drugs. The whole entire thing cost like $150.
That's insanely cheap.
It really, it really, really is. And then the other thing too is we can speak Vietnamese, or at least maybe not know the brand names of the medications that you take, but know the actual scientific names. There's a pharmacy on every corner here. I met a family not too long ago, just we were having Mexican food in the heart of Saigon. And, I hear them speaking English.
As you do.
Yeah. And, I was having I chatted them up a little bit, and yeah, they were out here because the husband was getting, I guess, some form of treatment that was either unavailable or unaffordable in the United States. So medical tourism is definitely a thing.
And Creighton, looking at your bio, I noticed you're a former competitive para triathlete and you happen to be missing a right leg. So I'm curious, when it comes to more specialist, I suppose, services such as I'm assuming something like prosthetics, how is that in Vietnam? And have you had any experience navigating those kind of services and support in the country?
No, this is where I am 1000% American, because the prosthetic units that I wear are from Össur, and I've got a great relationship with them, and they take great care of me. They're just a wonderful, wonderful company. And my prosthetist is over, in the US, and he's the one that he's the only one that I'll trust to build me what I need. So, we talked about how wonderful that the pricing is here. The ugly part is, I met a gentleman who had his leg blown off in the Vietnam War, and I think he had supported the Americans, and so he was able to fly over to America. They gave him a prosthetic leg, and he came back. He hasn't changed that prosthetic leg since the 1970s. He's got the technology that I was wearing when I was a child. The typical, I don't see that many amputees on prosthetic legs. What I do see is I see amputees being pushed around in wheelchairs. Okay, so that sort of availability, and access to modern technology, it really doesn't exist out here because because of the disparity in the dollar. It's so unaffordable to the average, Vietnamese citizen, that the only way they can get anything is with the blessing of the government, and the government's just simply not paying for those sorts of things. When I took my wife to the hospital, it was a man, that was a really nice hospital, right? Like I walked in and I was like, this is as nice as any hospital that I've ever been in the United States. Unfortunately, we've run around and gone to many hospitals, throughout my time here for various different reasons. And quite frankly, they're not up to par. The facilities are old and dirty, and they're overrun. The Vietnamese government would have what you would term universal health care, but the standard of that health care isn't really all that high. So, for example, my wife's grandfather was out here, and he got really sick a year ago, and he was in the hospital. They gave him a baseline care, but we were responsible for continuing to pay for and bring in necessities like food, diapers, those sorts of things, because it simply just wasn't covered.
Very different standard of universal
Very,
healthcare than what you might have, where I'm from in Australia or where I'm living in France. Or
yeah, because I know that there's a call for universal healthcare, especially in the United States. It's not as simple as saying, "Hey, we want universal healthcare." It's like, no, we got to really think this out and make sure that we have a well thought out baseline level of care that's accessible to everybody, accessible and affordable to everybody.
Creighton, I want to move on to finding work as a foreigner in
Sure,
Vietnam.
sure.
Obviously, you've come to Vietnam and you have your own business. What do you find that what industries do foreigners that you meet in Vietnam typically work in if they are working locally?
Well, so the number one local business that people come to Vietnam for is, or quite frankly, anywhere, especially in Asia, is to teach English. So a lot of English teachers, out here. There continues to be a high demand for that because a lot of the young kids, they want to learn English because English is their ticket to leveling up their life and their lifestyle from a financial standpoint.
And what's the pay like? If you're teaching English in Vietnam compared to other countries in Asia, is it competitive or is it not the best place to be looking to earn good money as a foreigner?
Well, I think as an English teacher, you can make a decent living for Vietnam, but maybe not. You're not going to be saving up tons and tons of money if your plan is to go back to a developed country where the cost of living is significantly higher. But you can definitely come here, get paid, and live a wonderful existence, live a wonderful life out here, because I mean things are just cheaper, especially if you eat locally.
Yeah, I can imagine. And where do people generally look for work as foreigners in Vietnam? Are there, Facebook groups or particular websites that are known among the English speaking community?
Yeah, there is oh boy, it's a massive group. They call it the mean group because these guys flame each other all the time. But there's a Facebook group called, I think, gosh, I can't remember if it's expats in Vietnam or if it's specifically expats in, Ho Chi Minh. I think if you do a basic Google search, there are agencies that will place you for English speaking, businesses. Having said that, if you really want to make good money and but have a low cost of living by being out here anywhere in Southeast Asia, you can do the freelancer route, although you got to hustle for your own business, and so that's not appealing to some people. Or the other way is you go and you get a job that's where people are okay and comfortable with you working remotely. And so you just become a remote worker for hire.
I want to move on to finding a place to live in Vietnam.
Sure.
I'm curious how you went about finding where you're living and what the differences are between a typical home that you will have in Vietnam compared to Western countries.
Yeah. So if anybody's coming here for the first time, what I would suggest, if you know somebody over here, talk to them about the different areas, and where to live. There are actually districts where there are more expats hanging out in Ho Chi Minh City. Where I am, it is all locals. I get super excited if I see somebody that I think can speak English, because there are days where I definitely go through life where with the exception of my wife, I can't communicate with a single solitary person. And so I would say just lock in a place for about a week, just so that you can get your bearings, and then go explore and figure out where you want to live and where the amenities are that you want. And finding places is super simple. You can just go to regular places like hotels and booking and agoda.com. They've got hotels that are as little as like $9 a day, so at $9 a day, you can sort of figure it out where you want to be.
And why do you need to live in a house when you could afford to live full time in a hotel?
Yeah, I mean,
If
if you
it's
have
that
no,
cheap.
yeah, well, houses are nice because they tend to be bigger and having a kitchen if you're going to be around long enough
This
where
is
you want to
true. Yeah.
do some of your
Practical
own.
things.
Yeah, do some of your own cooking. But and we've found places on Airbnb, ranging anywhere from $13 a night on up to $100 plus. So it sort of depends on what your budget is and what experience you're going for. There are a lot of these luxury condominiums where you could rent out the condominium for about $1,500 a month, and they come with a full-blown gym and swim pool, and probably even a rooftop bar to have access to. And so that's a really, really nice way to go. Do you want to be in the heart of the city where all the action is? If you do, I strongly suggest you get on a floor that's higher up so that you can be a little bit further away from all the street noise and all the traffic noise. Or do you want something out a little bit more slower paced and out in the burbs? It just really depends on what you want. But the experience can be found, whatever your comfort level is.
You mentioned these, 1,500 a month condos. How do they compare to renting from a private landlord and going through a local real estate agent, or is that not how it works there?
No, you can. My wife goes that route, and she'll talk to the agents and stuff like that. For me, just between Airbnb and the aforementioned booking sites, I mean, I've been able to find places without too much work and too much problem.
And what's a typical Vietnamese home like?
They are different. The first thing that you will notice when you come to Vietnam is how narrow a lot of the homes are. And the reason they're so narrow is because I think way back in the day, you were taxed on how big the front of your house was. So everybody built these narrow houses, which were super long and super high, but the front of the house is small, right? So that's the first thing you'll notice is like the width of the house isn't very big. The other thing is that typically the bottom floor is going to double for whatever it is, plus a garage. You'll also find that really almost in all places, except for your nicer hotels, because of the humidity out here, almost everything is this marble tiled floor because it dries faster. The problem for me is it's incredibly slippery, and so don't spill any water on it. But yeah, you won't find a heck of a lot of carpet here. And then I think the other big thing that will shock people is a lot of the bathrooms, because they're not that big, basically the shower and the toilet are in the same spot. So whenever you take a
Oh,
shower, like the whole bathroom gets wet, And so
kind of
that
like a
was kind of,
bathroom on a boat or something.
yeah, pretty much. Exactly. And so that's a different thing. I kind of joke with all the U.S. COVID stuff where people were hoarding toilet paper. Getting toilet paper here is not a problem because most people use the little bum gun to wash themselves. But yeah, the units are typically smaller out here. But again, you can find. I mean, we've found places that were really big, like really large and nice to live in. You can find whatever experience you want and
Sounds
whatever
like there's a
footprint.
lot of variety there.
Absolutely.
And when you're renting, do certain things come as standard? I know I was surprised when we started looking for rentals in France that it's not necessarily the case that there'll always be a kitchen installed. For some rentals, you have to put in your own kitchen, for example.
I mean, again, I think this goes back to, when you're searching on, the websites and even talking to the host, to be very clear about what it is you want and to ask those questions. The guys at service, they're usually very much on the ball and they'll get back to you with that. But yeah, there's places where there's no kitchen, there's just a hot pad. For some, I mean, a hot pad's more than enough, more than what you need. Whereas others, it's not enough. And so you do have to be very clear about what it is. I would also, caution to always check out the place to make sure that things are exactly what they are. I would do this anywhere, not just in Vietnam. For example, we rented a place not too long ago. We were actually homeless for a little while because our neighbors were putting an addition onto the home, and we were like, we got to get out of here. We can't work here because it's a construction zone. We went into this one place, and it looked like a great deal. It was in the heart of District 1. Everything, all the boxes were checked. And then we get in there, it's a non-smoking place, and no, somebody's been in here and somebody's been smoking. And so fortunately we only booked that for, I think, two or three nights. And we're like, yeah, we're out of here. We're not going to stick around here. We love the location, but didn't love the place.
Is smoking inside a lot more common in Vietnam?
Not so much inside, but smoking is definitely, much more prevalent out here. I mean, you need to remember too that I come from Oakland, California, and California has made it very difficult for smokers to smoke in any sort of indoor or public space. And as a non-smoker, I appreciate that very much. But out here, for example, there are 4 to 5 coffee shops on every single block. Like you literally can't go 20 meters without seeing a new coffee shop. But what we look for, because I work out of coffee shops quite a bit, we stay away from the open-aired coffee shops, partly because I need air conditioning. It's too darn hot out here in Vietnam. But also because most of the open-aired coffee shops are smoker friendly. And I also don't want to be anywhere near that as well.
Yeah, I find that really jarring here in France too. In Australia, it's much less common to have public areas like, restaurants and cafes and parks where smoking is still a thing. But here, even undercover at a tram stop, someone will just light up and I'll be like, oh my God, that is so inconsiderate. But what are you going to do,
Yeah. There are a lot of things out here that are culturally different. And at some point I had to learn, it's like, look, I'm in their country. I'm not going to change it. So,
Creighton, you mentioned sometimes looking for other English speakers and being really happy when you find them. How's your Vietnamese?
it's poor. I try. I think if it's one of those things, if my intelligence were based on my ability to pick up foreign language, I would be on the far, far left side of the curve for sure. But Chinese was really difficult for me to pick up, and there's like 4 tones in Chinese, and I think the Vietnamese have like 11 tones, and quite frankly, I can't hear the difference in the tones, and so I struggle. I'm real excited when I can actually pick up a word. When my wife and her family are talking, it's like, wait, hold on, I know that word. I'm excited here. Let me jump in, and then never mind the tonalities, then the speed in which they talk with too. It's a challenge.
How do most foreigners go about learning the language? Are there Vietnamese courses offered, or is it more of a, one-on-one tutoring, or, trying to learn through families?
Yeah, I mean, I think for most people, not me, but most people can, if they're hanging around it enough, they're going to be able to start picking things up. I had a friend of mine. She came out. She came out for our wedding last year, and I swear to God, in 1 week she picked up more Vietnamese than I had picked up in 3 years. So some people just naturally pick it up, and being immersed in it is is super helpful. Here's a little cheat, little tip. You can go, well, not right now, but pre-COVID, you could go down to the park. There would be a lot of people there who are trying to learn English, and there would be, on any given day, anywhere from 3 to 5 guys there, and they would just sit on a park bench, and they would just for an hour talk English with any of the Vietnamese there, and you would see them, and after a while they would, they'd be like a little Pied Piper. There'd be this group of, anywhere from 8 to 12 Vietnamese just listening to this guy talk English, because they're just trying to soak it in and learn and understand English. Well, guess what? You go do that and you just start talking English. Well, you're going to start talking English and Vietnamese. And so you guys, they can kind of teach each other.
So it's pretty easy to find a tandem partner if you really want to learn.
Yeah, because the thing to remember is that the English is the higher commodity, right? Because it's more rare. Everybody speaks Vietnamese. Only a small portion of people speak English. So if you've got English, people want you. And so if people want you, then you're going to be able to find people that you can, all right, I'll teach you a little bit of English. You teach me a little bit of Vietnamese. I think it's super easy to find that dynamic.
And how much Vietnamese do you need to get by day to day?
I have developed an entire behavioral pattern to be able to go into foreign countries and get away with not being able to speak the language. So.
Shame on you.
And by the way, this was before cell phones. I used to just be able to get away with a smile and, and just sort of pointing with a fake marionette and, figuring out, and people figure out what you want and everything. And it also was a lot of trust too. I just give them the money, for example, if I was trying to buy something, and, I knew generally what it would cost, and you just kind of trust the people to be, to be honest and give you the exact change back and that sort of thing. But in today's world, it's stupid easy, right? Because for $5 out here, I think you can get a data card for your phone, and you insert that into your phone, and between Google Translate and Google Search, you can pretty much communicate anything you want, right? So yeah, and instead of trying to play charades and explain that you need toilet paper, you can actually just type in toilet paper in Google and show them a picture of it, and the store will show you where to go buy toilet paper.
Do the Vietnamese take offense if you don't try to speak their language, or are they pretty fine?
I think it's like everywhere. If you're going to give it the good old college try, people are really thankful and they enjoy that you're trying, especially when you're messing up too, because they get a good laugh out of it, as well. But for the most part, most of the people out here have been, very open, and generous towards, trying to help make it work. And you got to keep in mind too that, like, in some of the more tourist areas, like there's more English speaking locals available. I am literally in the heart of, like, where there's nothing but locals. And I mean, I can barely talk to my neighbors sometimes. I just point, thumbs up, smile. We're good.
Finally, Creighton, I just wanted to get your thoughts on your move initially to Vietnam, and based on your experiences, if there's anything that you would have done differently.
Boy, I don't know if I would have necessarily done anything differently, because my transition was super slow over here. I mean, I just kind of kept bouncing back and forth from the States for a couple of years. Like I said, I originally came over here through a group called Hacker Paradise, and like that was a wonderful, wonderful experience, because we had our leader Izzy, who would plan like all these cool events. So I didn't actually have to do any of the research or any of the planning to go visit places like the Standing Buddha or Hoi An lantern festivals, or there's an island down there with, that we went to, and like those things were all taken care of, for me. And that really helped because that freed me up to do more work, number one. And then number two, I also had, and maybe call this good or bad, but, I had an instant network of people who didn't know anybody else out there too. And so, we had a Slack channel and be like, hey, I'm going out to dinner. If anybody else wants to go out to dinner, meet me down in the lobby at 6:00. And so you never ate alone. Like you always had somebody that you could share the experience with. And so I also had a instant, social network.
You had like an instant support network around
Yeah.
you when you moved.
Yeah. And so, but having gone through this several times and lived in different places like Chiang Mai and Bali, and, what I would say is that for most people, it sounds really romantic to come out here and do the digital nomad thing and to work and travel. But, the first thing is it's work and it's not a vacation, number one. Number two, you have to find ways to ground yourself. A friend of mine, Pauline, we would talk a lot, and we always would say, there are challenges still. There are things, right? It's not, it's not a vacation. And so it's very important to find things that, whenever you move to a new place, that will ground yourself. And what I mean by that is it could be in a routine. If you do yoga all the time, or you pound weights all the time, or you go for runs all the time, the first thing you need to do is to get in here and get your fitness regime back on board. That's probably something that I could have and should have done a better job at. It could be the person or persons you're traveling with, right? If that, they can ground you, because when things kind of go a little sideways, like you always have that safe, that safe place. And so that to me is something that is really important for anybody who is thinking about doing work and travel, is to find ways to ground yourself, to anchor yourself, so you're not just sort of floating out there. Because that, when you're just sort of floating through the wind, it can be a little bit difficult. And taking care of your mental health is definitely a thing, especially when you're in a foreign place with foreign people, foreign lands, foreign cultures, like everything is not normal to you. What's the one thing that you can grasp to keep you calm inside the chaos?
That's it for this episode. If you have questions for Creighton or want to share your own experience of expat life in Vietnam, head over to expatfocus.com. At the bottom of our homepage, you'll find links to our Facebook groups. Be sure to check out our other episodes. We interview expats and experts on all aspects of life abroad. If you like what we do, please leave us a review on your favourite podcast app, and I'll catch you next time.